here. We're with a great guest, Tiana Miller. Tiana, very funny lady, very funny comedian. Also has MS, which is very interesting. Well, it probably sucks though, right?
It's really fun.
Yeah. Well, you're a young comedian too. You're like 20.
I'm 28.
28, yeah.
I got diagnosed when I was 20. Yeah, it's multiple sclerosis. Montel has it, but Montel has more money.
Yeah.
And he also has a psychic friend. Well, I guess she's dead now. Rest in peace, Sylvia Brown. But yeah. So I guess you want to hear about that?
I'm just interested because like.
Or you want to ask questions, or should I just ramble off the story? It's a long story.
I know, yeah. I mean, it's just a lot to process. Because recently, like, you were in a hospital for it, and you had like a big thing.
Oh yeah, I was in the hospital for 7 days. Well, I think I should start out explaining what MS is, just in case people don't know. MS is multiple sclerosis. It's actually an autoimmune disorder where like the T and B cells, which are the cells in your immune system that protect your spinal cord, your nervous system, and your brain, for whatever reason, turn against it and actually eat holes into the insulation. Like, say a wire, you know how a wire has insulation? Mm-hmm. It eats away at that insulation all throughout the nerves in your body, and it also eats, like, literal holes into your brain and your spinal cord.
Well, that's a scary thing, you know, because, like, being a comic, your brain is, like, your most prized thing.
Well, the scariest thing about MS is that it can, like, where you get a lesion, pretty much anything can happen. You can end up deaf, you can end up blind, you can end up deaf and blind, you can end up in a wheelchair, you can end up in a wheelchair deaf and blind. You could be fine. It just depends where you end up getting the lesion. So recently, I originally just had it on the left cortex and it spread to the right. Hmm. So, yeah, I was in the hospital for 7 days. I had a bunch of...
I'm sure it's, like, because, like, we always want to do stand-up and shit, and then you got this thing that's
yeah. Well, the really tough part about it is I'm also a teenage runaway, so I don't really have any family or a support system.
Are you from the city, or...?
Well, I'm actually from Long Island, but when I was... I lived kind of on the street. I was, like, coming from Brooklyn and in and out from Long Island to Brooklyn all the time. I stayed with my ex-boyfriend, who actually just passed away on May 11th, rest in peace, Tim Mertz. He was only 28. Unfortunately, a lot of my friends from back then died.
Did he die from a certain thing, or?
Most of my friends have passed away before 30 from drugs or suicide because being just, you know, homeless and like living that sort of lifestyle. And I guess a lot of us suffer from depression and anxiety, and most of us had family problems, and that's why we were on the streets together. And so it's just an unfortunate. I actually lost 2 of my closest friends to suicide this year. My other friend, Kaylin, hung himself on November 11th. So it's just, I don't know. It's like those rap songs. You know, we know our homies in our group die young.
Right.
But I lived with him for like 8 years, so it was intense. It was like crazy. And then I had to go to like another friend who like got out of, who was never really in that lifestyle as much. We were all musicians. I don't know if you know this. I started out in a punk band, and I was very much part of the punk music scene. And so my other friend was getting married. She actually quit entertainment because she's not as stupid as us, and went to school and became like a real person with a real job. And now she was getting married, and it was just so bizarre to go from a funeral of my ex to like the wedding with the same group of people. It was like such a trip. That's not even MS. I don't even know where.
So you think like, well,
I think that's really that's what's affecting me the most emotionally right now. I think is I lost a lot of people. I also lost my brother-in-law this year suddenly. He left behind a 7 and an 11-year-old. Just, I don't know. I think it just goes with poverty and depression, anxiety, all that great stuff.
Did this like fuel you to like get into comedy, or?
Well, actually, I always wanted to be a comedian, but my main thing is I really wanted to be a writer at first. And
like what type of writing?
I'm a huge book nerd, and I really wanted to write novels. I was so into Bukowski that I got a job at the post office, even though he said the post office.
You actually worked at the post office?
Yeah.
How long?
That's actually when I first got diagnosed with MS.
Oh.
I was working at the post office and as an overnight diner waitress. So I was an overnight diner waitress here in New York for like 10 years. And I think I was living in my car. I was living in my car, and I went to go to work. I'll just tell you how it came on. It's a pretty interesting story. I went to go to work, and every morning before work, I would go to the same 7-Eleven and get a cup of coffee. Because, you know, I didn't have a coffee maker. Almost. But, so I went and I got my coffee, and I went to carry it to the counter, and I just kept dropping it, and it was so weird because I was like telling my hand to hold it, but my hand wasn't doing what I was telling it to. I ended up dropping like 3 coffees. I finally just gave up, and then I went to work that day, and my boss accused me of being drunk. I was acting really drunk. And all through this, I was also going through criminal charges. I had just been arrested on a felony, and I was looking at 5 years or probation. And you can't take probation if you're homeless because the probation officer has to come.
Can I ask for what? Or?
I was caught dealing and selling drugs.
Because you have to survive, basically, right? Or just yeah.
Well, yeah, because I had to survive, but I did have a heroin problem for probably like a year or 2, and I think, that was definitely a downfall. And that's actually how a lot of my friends went, is ODing on heroin. So heroin is a really bad problem where I come from. It's like when we had parties, it was like passed around on a plate, and we all started out sniffing it, and then eventually it just turns into that's not enough. I'm like, pretty much everything the movies say are true. It's a horrible drug.
And you grew up in Long Island, right?
Yeah.
So it was big in your like Long Island town?
Yeah, it's extremely big. It's so big on Long Island now that News Channel 12 Long Island has its own like show called The Heroin Diaries, because kids are just dropping dead left and right.
Do you still use it? Like
No. I don't even use it for my MS. I am done with opiates. It took too many of my. But I think the only reason why I had a lot of survivor's guilt, and I think the reason why I'm here maybe and they're not is just because, like, if someone tells me I can't do something or I'm not, I'm like, I have to do it. It's like a.
Well, that's what I think makes you like a funny, like unique comedic voice. You know?
Yeah.
Like you do characters, and also I feel like another thing about you that's really cool is that you're just like, fuck it. You have like a very like...
You don't have much more to care about after, you go through jail. I've lost every single person I've had a serious relationship has died.
So like does
my autobiographical cartoon character is Gramps because I feel like an 85-year-old man. Like, it's crazy.
Do you think about like death and stuff? Like your friends like passing away, or even like this disease like...
Yeah, I have my best friend since I was like 6 to the time he passed away when he was 20, Mickey. I have a tattoo of him. Tim and Kaylin I just recently lost. I think of them every day, and a lot of it's like I'm kind of pissed because they were great people and they don't get to live.
Because they were young or so.
Yeah, they were still kids, all of them. Like, as far as they never really get to enjoy their life. So like part of me is like, I'm just going to go out and do it while I can. And also, MS is a huge motivator with that because, like, with the cane, I never know when I'm going to get worse or what's going to happen when I get worse. So it's like every day I have to kind of... I don't feel good, so a lot of days I just watch movies. But it really kicked me in the ass to go do what I really wanted to do.
Hi, welcome to Street Savvy with me, and what are your names?
Carl.
What's your name?
Kelly.
Cool, awesome. Alright, I have a quick question. Can we use your likeness for the TV show?
Yeah, go ahead.
Alright, awesome. Thank you so much. We got it.
I was like half numb and going to parties, and my friends would just lay down a blanket, and I'd just like lay there while everyone partied around me.
What?
Yeah, I swear to God. I swear.
So you're like your own weekend at Bernie's?
Yeah, seriously. It was like I couldn't use drugs because I was facing court, but I was like naturally tripping balls, and I was just like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, the experience, right?
Yeah.
Just like be around like your friends and start getting like.
Yeah, but it started getting so painful, like I couldn't stand any sensation. It just kept getting worse, and that's when I would just like hide in my car and just like lay there. And another really funny thing is, for whatever reason, whenever I'm experiencing like an episode of receiving brain damage, and if you get enough, your brain tissue, or I'm not sure if it's your brain tissue, but your nerves start swelling, and it like makes you all fogged, and that's what I was in the hospital like.
When this all hit you, like, what did you think when they told you, like, oh no, you
They didn't. This is the craziest thing. So my friend took me to the ER. I wait to go in. I'm joking around with them the whole time because, like, I'm trying to make myself more comfortable by joking around. And they gave me a CAT scan, and the guy told me I didn't have insurance, so they rushed me out. The guy told me, "Oh, I think you just don't get enough vitamin B." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't think that's what this is."
Right.
But luckily, a neurologist who I guess worked pro bono for some cases. Took pity on me and was like, listen, come to my office, you need colored MRIs. Like, that's obviously not vitamin B. So I went and I got the colored MRIs, and then like a week later he called me and he was like, you have to get to the hospital right now. You have 10 open lesions on your brain. The biggest one is 2 centimeters deep, which is like huge for a wound on your brain. And your tissues are gonna swell. You could die. It's gone on long enough.
So were you just like, what the fuck?
Well, it was. I couldn't drive at the time, so I ended up going inside and I asked my boyfriend's mom if she could drive me, and she had to go pick up her daughter who was really young from soccer practice. So I actually I can't even remember because I had brain damage. I was like so out of it. I actually took a cab to the hospital, and I got there and they gave me a spinal tap alone, and then eventually someone tracked down my brother, and my brother came, and my brother tracked down my mother, who I had been estranged with from for a while, and that was the first time I'd seen my family in a really long time, and I was in the hospital for 2 weeks just getting tons of steroids and hooked up on everything, and the court was like...
How did your family treat you when they saw that? Because this is like a weird reunion, when it's like, oh great, I'm dying, now I see you guys here.
My dad was like, oh, it's all your fault.
Serious?
Yeah, he's like, oh, this is what you get for doing drugs, and I'm bi, and he caught me hooking up with a girl, and he's like, this is what you get for,
Like God's punishment?
Yeah, well, not God's punishment, but just I had been living crazy, and that's what happens. And I kept trying to tell him, like, it's not the drugs, it's a disease I have, and I've actually always had it, I now know, because I always had tremors, and I used to black out in the shower, and I didn't realize that was, like, early onset stages of MS. And my dad would always, like, yell at me for knocking shit over and stuff, and that's just, I have spastic muscles, I can't help it. So he actually came and yelled at me at first, and then he was like there a little, and my mom was there with me, and it was weird because my mom was like, okay, so I'm going to stay up for a month and just make sure you're all set, and then I'm going to go back to Florida and you can do your thing up here. But I was like crawling in and out of my boyfriend's window, like half numb, totally crippled, like basically I had to be in a wheelchair for a while too, and I had to give myself daily shots and all this shit. And it was just not something my boyfriend, who, again, just passed away May 11th, he couldn't really handle it. He was too young. And I don't know what was going through my mom's mind that she thought, like, in 2 months she was going to, like, make a 20-year-old able to handle all of this. She was, like, homeless. But we ended up, like, crashing on different relatives' couches. And eventually, when I went to court, they were like, they gave me community service, and they were like, oh, well, I could prove I was receiving brain damage, so I got kind of let off with just community service. But then I went to community service, and I was so sick, they just said, okay, well, you have to go live with your mom, and my mom lived in Georgia. So all of a sudden, I went from being like a New York City street kid to being in bumblefuck Georgia, and me and my mom had problems again, so I ended up running away with new guy that I had met who lived in a place called Trailer Park City, which is literally a county of trailer parks.
In Georgia?
In Georgia. like such a mind fuck. And like my whole body's working different now. My whole mind's working different now. I'm still adjusting to it, and all of a sudden I'm in like, you know, you come New York City street kid, like you can hear it in my voice, and people would say, they'd be like, oh, well, that's the city of sin. You know, and they were all like racist and homophobic, and I was like, it was just so bizarre. It's such a weird cultural switch, especially when you're going through like brain damage.
I just find it weird that like they sentence you to like, all right, so go live with your mom in Georgia. Like they didn't want to deal with you or like try to help you out.
I had to be a ward of something, so it was either that or a ward of the state. And they couldn't.
You were 20, right?
Yeah.
So even though you're 20, you still have to want to make you like.
Well, because I'm seriously disabled, and when I have episodes like this, that my first one was. I don't know if it was worse or I'm just more used to it this time. I also had a lot more support this time. The comedy community was really amazing. Like they all came out and, you know, they were like, you gotta get back on stage, and I had like people I didn't even know were sending me comic books and like gift baskets, and I felt like, you know, like, oh, I'm like famous. Even though, you know, I'm not. It just felt really good.
Can we jump on that? Like, so when did you start doing stand-up? Like, because it seems like when I started doing stand-up, I was like suicidal. Like, I had like a shitty upbringing and stuff. Like, I grew up with like a crackhead. It was really fucked up. Yeah. Like a crackhead schizophrenic, so it wasn't.
Oh my.
It wasn't fun.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
So.
Where did you grow up?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
Yeah.
What part of Brooklyn?
Flatbush.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was just like, and the neighborhood was kind of bad too. It was just like.
Well, I'd imagine a schizophrenic crackhead probably has a little bit of trouble paying the bills.
Oh, not just that though, but it's like when people like he borrows money from who are sketchy, and then they come in like knocking on your door, like, so where's the money? And it's like you're just like a 6-year-old kid, like.
You're like, where's the Saturday morning cartoon?
Exactly. Right.
This episode of The Healthy Zone was about learning to use good communication skills so people can help you when you are feeling overwhelmed. Also, it was to show ways to express your anger than just yelling at everyone.
Susan and Lucy were using their communication skills to show that they had empathy for their sister Molly.
So, we'll see you next time on another episode of
The Healthy Zone.
Hey, we're back.
Mom! Dad! You're alive?
Oh, no, we're still dead. Didn't we tell you? We're zombies.
I was talking about how I started doing stand-up.
Yeah.
And I think it's similar to you, because like with the MS and like just like a crazy like background you come from, and like I relate to it. That's how crazy your background is.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, like I could, you know, when you grow up from New York, even if it's Long Island, you can understand. It's hard being like a kid in like such a aggressive like you know egotistical like type of city where like. You know, this is a city for adults. It's not a city
and
for
it's not
kids.
a city for disabled people either.
Right.
It's just like, you get the fuck out of
For the haves, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no...
for the haves, exactly.
The have-nots are basically slaves.
It was actually a perfect way to put it, I think.
But when I started doing stand-up, getting back to it, like, I was like at my bottom. Not my bottom. I was just like, fuck it, what's the point? And then like, I'd watch guys like George Carlin and like Richard Pryor and Lenny Bruce, or like read about Lenny Bruce, and I'm like, wow, that's cool. These guys get to say fuck you to the world and get paid for it. And there was also that romanticism about comedians and like, hey, we're like the misfit group. You can like hang out with these guys, talk, and like. So I was like, yeah, I'll try to do stand up, you know. And like I'd call up the comedy clubs because I didn't know. I'm like 17. I'm like, how do you know? I was like, hey, can I get a spot? Or can I get up? How do you get up?
And they were like, bring in 19 people and buy 400 drinks, and maybe...
Better. They framed it in a way where like, sure, you can do my show, bring your friends. I'm like, I don't have friends.
I remember that. I did a burger show, and my boyfriend's like such a sweetheart. He got hit by a car, broke his collarbone, and still came because they needed to meet the bringer limit. And that was the first time I bombed, because the whole time I was just looking at him in the audience. And he didn't have health insurance either, so they didn't give him a sling, so I had to tie a scarf around his neck.
That night?
Yeah.
How can you? Yeah. How are you going to concentrate when you gotta do that?
He should also have sued the hospital because they just sent him home on the subway with like no fucking.
Well, they don't really care unless you have like the loot,
Yeah, I guess we were talking about that before.
Yeah. So
yeah, who was your main influence? Like growing, like who were you like? Whoa, I really want to be that.
Like stand-up wise?
Yeah. Like
I mean, it depends though. I mean, like when I was a kid, I'd say like the main was like.
Take three, because I have like my three. Like what? Who was the first person who brought you into? I don't know. That is a tough question.
It's hard, man. Yeah.
Now that I said it, I was like, wow.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like I would love to be like George Carlin, where it's like tons of material and like
all perfectly written. Short form, like all his jokes are so
like
fast.
Stories, yeah, like essays, like mini essays.
And he's a linguist. Yeah, thank you.
Linguist?
Connolinguist. Connolinguist. He's a linguist. That bit he has about like how all the best words are spelled the same, backwards and forwards, boob, tit, like. I love George Carlin, man.
Yeah, like also I liked Sam Kinison. I was a big fan of.
I could totally see
Yeah.
you being a fan. That makes sense. I like asking comedians that question because you get to see a mixture of their styles.
Also, Richard Pryor, of course,
Definitely could see that.
But,
Richard Pryor died of MS.
Oh yeah.
That was before they had good treatment, though. So.
Dude, you have like the cool comic disease, man. MS, man. You're like
Richard Pryor too.
You're like Kevin Garnett, man.
Well, it also progresses faster in men, but this is before they had good medicine for MS, which it actually was kind of like a fatal diagnosis at that time. Richard Pryor is so cool though because he was in a wheelchair, and all the comics would just pick him up and put him on stage, and he was doing comedy right up to the end. That's what I would do, man. I would be like on my deathbed, like, did you hit the one?
Like, because you remember you said like when you would go to parties, you'd just be like on the floor, just like I gotta do it, man. I gotta do it.
Yeah.
Well, you the same for comedy?
I've always been one of the because of writing. I've always been one of those people who I was an idiot. I used to just take the Fun Raw bus, ghetto shit ever. I'd be like 16, hop on a $15 Fun Raw bus and just go to DC, get off at 4 a.m., hang out with I went to DC once. I just got off at 4 a.m. And it was at the height of the crime rate, and this guy came up to me covered in blood and starts explaining to me that he's actually a player for the Mets, but it's the off season.
So it's like that's why he's bloody?
So can I have some money? And I was like, well, wouldn't you still have money even during the off season? And he was like, we're very good. And I was like, fair enough, okay. And I was also like tripping balls. I don't know how I'm still alive, basically.
That's great. You just met some random dude who's just like, I play for the Mets, but I'm bloody now. Can I get some money?
Like I'm much tamer now that I'm ill. But I used to be like, feed me experiences. We used to like literally drive my car up a tall hill and then like play back and turn the headlights off and put the car in neutral. And I'd just be like, maybe we'll die.
Yeah. Hello?
Your parents are dead.
What?
Also, you've been fired.
What?
Also, you know that cute girl you like?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, she doesn't like you.
Wait. Hold on a second. Cut that out. You've got to be kidding me.
Oh, also, I just used up all your minutes.
My life is nothing but woe. This isn't cinnamon.
Alan.
How do you know my name?
Alan, don't eat me, Alan. Otherwise your life will be nothing but woe.
My life is already nothing but woe.
Then you do not know the meaning of the word woe.
But I am pretty hungry.
Wait, you've got to be kidding me. Wait, oh God, no!
That was weird. Good oatmeal, though. Nice and mushy.
kid, wanna play a game?
Here. Make me guess what's on my forehead. Jeez. Some people just don't get it.
Mom, Dad, you're alive?
Yes.
But our lives are nothing but woe.
Check out Tiana, guys. Very funny lady. You know, this is gonna be a very famous episode one day when you blow up. And
Oh,
be
thank
famous.
you.
You're gonna be like, oh, you know, look at these like baby pictures of her before she became huge.
Stop that.
And it's, you know, cure MS and all that stuff.
I like how you're like,
comedy.
don't die. You're gonna get famous.
yeah,
Like those two extremes of how life could go right there.
yeah, don't die and then get famous.
You know
That's
what?
a waste, right?
That's another thing I want to say. MS teaches you to live in the moment. And
yeah, it's perfect,
not straight to the top, I'm going to be famous one day. What do I want to do now, and how am I going to do it?
Yeah.
And how am I going to be happy with what I have?
Right.
That was deep. I think I wrapped it up there.